Good morning, everybody. Hello, I am here with Colleen.
Hello.
And today, many of you know her, but we are here today with Sioux Strong. Hi, Sue.
Hi, happy to be here.
So, Sue is one of the other co-authors of the ICRT Animal Reiki courses and manuals. For those of you that have taken Animal Reiki with us, of course, she teaches with us as well. We all teach together, the three of us, in our courses. And we were chatting and we realized that the three of us actually either haven't done a podcast together or it's been years and years. I know, Sue, you were on one of the Reiki Q&As way back in the day. Like I wasn't even hosting with Colleen at that point. I mean, that was years and years and years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
like,
We're like, what? We've been
Time
thinking,
flies.
well, like, what have we been thinking? Not doing like an animal Reiki podcast with each other. I thought we had, so I thought we had. So that's really, really funny when we were chatting about it. Sue's like, no, I don't think so. Anyway, Sue also works with us at Reiki Lifestyle. And for those of you that don't know her, you know Colleen and I and our kind of animal history through the episodes. You've heard it over the years and growing up with animals and that connection and everything. But Sue, do you want to just talk a little bit about your story? And then we're here to kind of talk about all things animal Reiki this episode. But do you want to talk a little bit about your story and how, because for those of you that don't know, Sue is like animal expert extraordinaire. She just, so yeah, I'll let you finish. So Reiki and your animal history as well, kind of what you tell people in our animal Reiki classes and anything else.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I started, like most of us, loving animals as a child and wanting to be around animals, bringing home all the strays, those kinds of things. I really wanted a dog, and my mom didn't really want a dog. She knew the commitment was, 10 to 12 years typically for a dog. So she figured out that if I raised a guide dog puppy, we only had to commit to a year. So she signed me up in 4-H, and we started raising guide dog puppies back in 1974. So I did that all through in a junior high and high school. And then I went to Moorpark College in Southern California and got a degree in exotic animal training and management. And so that led me down a path of working with exotic animals. And in between that time, also besides raising guide dogs, I was working at a vet clinics on weekends, cleaning kennels, those kinds of things. Anything I could do to be around animals. And so once I graduated from Moorpark, I was given the opportunity to fill in at the Santa Barbara Zoo and work there. And it's a smaller zoo that worked with a variety of animals. So you weren't just working with one species. I got to work with multiple animals, including some Asian elephants, which then got my interest in elephants. Then had an opportunity to go to Kansas City to work with African elephants and African plains animals like giraffe and eland and things like that. So that was super neat. And then came back home. My mother got ill, so I moved back home, and the Santa Barbara Zoo graciously took me back. So I was there for 8 years. And then I wanted to get into more elephants. And so my husband and I moved to Portland to work at the Portland Zoo just specifically with elephants. And so that was why we moved. And my mom was living with us. So it was a good financial change too for us to move to Oregon. And I'm so happy we did. This is home for me. California never felt like home. And so I really enjoy being around the animals. And then life changes, and I was going to be laid off from the Portland Zoo because I was one of the last hires. And coincidentally, Guide Dogs for the Blind was opening up a new facility here in Oregon. So came full circle and applied, and I have been at Guide Dogs for over 30 years now. And so I'm currently on an on-call basis and still absolutely love being part of that organization, love the mission, love everything about it. I've also, to make extra money, worked emergency clinic vet tech for 6 years. So that's kind of all of my animal experience, and got back into raising guide dog puppies as an adult when I found out you didn't have to be in 4-H anymore. So I raised like 22 dogs for them as well. So I've had my hands on quite a few dogs over the years and working with multiple clients, which is super special to me. And then my Reiki journey back in 2006, a coworker was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then another coworker of ours and good friend Googled, we wanted to help. How do you help when you have a friend that has breast cancer? What do you do? And so she Googled and Colleen's picture came up. And so she approached me and said, do you want to go do this Reiki class? And mind you, I'm science-based. So I'm very left-brained and had sciences in my education. And I'm like, it's what? It's what? Well, kind of like energy work. And she tried to explain, but she didn't know either. That's why we were going to the class. And so I'm that friend that's like, okay, I'll try that. Hence my motorcycle license. I have a motorcycle license as well, because I had a friend that wanted to take the class and didn't want to go by herself. So we showed up, and I was, not didn't have my arms crossed, was going to prove this wrong and this is bunk, but I was like, from a scientific perspective, how does this work? And is this real? And so enjoyed the class immensely, and learned a lot about energy and how Reiki works. And we, at that time, just signed up for Reiki 1. I left my manual at Colleen's house. And so I went back the next day to pick it up. And in Colleen's way, nudged me to stay for the Reiki 2 class. So I was there by myself. And so that was really weird that I was there when there were 2 friends, because they wanted support. And then I'm there by myself taking Reiki 2. So one thing led to the next. Colleen also thought I would be really interested in shamanic training. So she introduced me to the Light Song community. And so got really involved with the Light Sun community and shamanic healing. And so the 2 just blended quite nicely, and then continued, my work with the guide dogs and all things animal. So, yeah. So, and then I'm just was so honored to, when I tried to retire, but did not quite make it. So that's why I'm on call, but that I was so blessed that you guys asked me to join the Reiki Lifestyle team, which I'm so happy that you did and really enjoy. I do the video editing and posting of podcasts and YouTubes and things like that. So that's kind of my story.
I have one small thing to add, and we won't go into detail, but also Sue was instrumental in helping the wild elephant populations of Myanmar. It was Burma back then, and helping them to restore some of those wild elephant populations through breeding.
Reproduction.
Yeah, reproduction. Thank you. Reproduction. Helping with elephant reproduction, and helping that in the teak forests. So that's another big part of her history as well.
Well, and I would add to that too, Sue, in addition, part of the journey of animal Reiki particularly was because I was really teaching human Reiki. Robyn was still in college, and that's when, I asked you to develop an animal Reiki course, which you did, and Robyn and I studied animal Reiki with you to begin with, and then that's when in 2015, William Rand asked if we would write the Animal Reiki course for the ICRT. And of course, I naturally immediately called Sue. And then that's when she and I started writing it. We included Robyn. She became a co-author. Pam Allen LeBlanc became all 4 of us getting it written. And most of all, the animals and the divine animal kingdom that determined what the course would be and what the animal Reiki would be, but really brought us all together through such a divine process.
Yes, Colleen and I were in Sue's first class.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was a tools and techniques class then, whereas through the process of the course and manuals, we, realized somewhere along the line that it was its own energy and But at that time, and that was at Melanie's house, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Melanie's, who is, we'll give a little shout out, Heart Space Horse Sanctuary. She's in Redmond, Oregon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, but she's online, and you can find her horse sanctuary online at Heart Space Horse Sanctuary. So give her a little shout out too. So wonderful organization. Um, so, first of all, we want to say, obviously, we are the authors and creators of this course and manual, but we also honor all lineages of animal Reiki, and that you absolutely can do animal Reiki with your existing Reiki. Our course and lineages for those who are called to it. I do think that the energy that was channeled into this course is very helpful on a personal level. It really is also, we've noticed a difference with some animals who better resonate with this energy. One of my own dogs included. He's with us in spirit world now, spiritual world. But I do also want to say we're going to talk about some of the things that we have learned as far as the techniques that you can use, whether you're tuned to this lineage of animal Reiki or you are going to use these techniques with your existing Reiki energy. So it could be used just with your existing Reiki energy as well. So we always like to give that caveat. So but Sue, why don't you go ahead and start with some of the techniques that you first introduced, even in your original class, that have been helpful in and what are in the current classes, the priorities and some things like that that people may not, that's helpful to know about animal Reiki.
Yeah. So yeah, when Colleen nudged me to, do at least an intro, because what I soon realized is I made a lot of mistakes because I got done with Colleen's 1 and 2 class. And of course, what's the first thing I do? I went home and thought I would do it on all my animals and made some mistakes. And so I thought it would be a good idea to just have a 1-day course of, like you said, tools and techniques and how a session could go smoother, possibly. And so that has morphed into what we now refer to as the 3 priorities in the ICRT course. And so the first one being consent. And so that was something I didn't think I needed if they were my animals. So I came home and I actually didn't have a great relationship with my cat that had moved in with us with my current partner, and realized I just kind of grabbed her and put her on my lap and was kind of forcing Reiki on her. And so learned that, consent is very important to gain, not only from the animal client themselves, but also from what we like to refer to as caregivers. We don't use the term owner. We tend to use caregiver or caretaker. So if there is a caregiver or caretaker involved, we do like to get their permission as well. And that has made such a big difference. Just that little uh, tip and doing that right from the beginning has really established my sessions and the starting of a session, and finding that the animals are more open and receptive, just by taking a minute and asking for consent. And then another priority is safety. And again, working with exotic animals for over 15 years and being on safety committees, I am very safety aware. And so when you work with things that can possibly kill you because you made a mistake, you get very aware of these things. So, I'm always considering the safety of myself, a caregiver, and the animal client. So that's an important priority that's come through. And then observation. So that came through even in my intro class, because I've spent many, many years and hours with doing field research and observing animals, literally with a counter marking how many times they did a certain behavior and checking boxes on a sheet for research. And so the power of observation is key, I feel like, in an animal Reiki session. And so that's why it's their way of communicating to us and giving us behavioral signals presenting different body parts potentially, and things like that. And the other thing too is having the animal have what we refer to as Reiki in motion, and allowing the animal to have freedom during a session. Again, in my naive, grabbing the cat, forcing them on my lap. She didn't want to be there, but I thought the Reiki will fix it, and I'll just keep my hands on her. And so with animal Reiki, in the Tree of Life symbol, it's amazing. They are so receptive to the energy, and that you can do both hands on and hands off. And actually, distance Reiki is very useful as well for animal clients. So yeah, those are, again, learning from my mistakes and how to not do things. And we have all shared stories in class of making those same mistakes. And thank goodness animals are so caring and compassionate with us, and are our best teachers. And they still, in every session, are teaching, and find that I learn lessons all the time from them.
Well, what I appreciate about the 3 priorities and learning about them is obviously all of them. Consent, like you said, we've all made that mistake of like, oh yeah, no, they're beings, that sentient beings, like we also need to ask them if they want Reiki. And even sometimes, like you said, Sue, we all have um stories like that, because it actually happened to me with a cat not too long ago. I was in a feed store, and they adopt out kittens through the feed stores. Like, people bring in feral kittens, or the ones that were born in their barn or things like that, litters, and so they adopt them out through the feed store. And so there's the one cat left in there, and in the big cat thing enclosure. And so there's one left in there, and I thought, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and just hold this kitten. It seemed like it wanted to be held. And so it was fine being held. And I love cats because they teach us boundaries. Um, they're so good at their own boundaries. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna activate Reiki for this kitten. And it was happy as could be in my arms. And then I literally, turned on Reiki, visualized the Tree of Life symbol, turn it on, and it hissed at me. It looked up at me and hissed at me. And I was like, how many animal Reiki classes have we taught at this point? This wasn't that long ago. This was like last year. And I still forgot. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I am so sorry. Yes, of course, like, you get to have consent over whether or not you get to have Reiki right now. And as soon as I said, oh no, wait, Reiki off, it was very content to just be held in my arms and pet. And what's funny is that wasn't even the point of my story, but consent was of course a big one. And like, yeah, we learn from our mistakes. They're continually teaching us. But one of the things that I love about these priorities is that observation piece, because I think part of some of the pressure with animal Reiki is about like, how am I going to know if they say yes or if they say no? Either I don't have like an intuitive style of practice yet, or that telepathic communication yet. I haven't built that as a part of my practice because I'm relatively new to Reiki, or maybe that's not a part of my practice in general. Maybe like you were saying, Sue, you're a little more science minded, and that's more of the style of Reiki that you practice. Because animals, yes, they communicate telepathically, they communicate intuitively, but they also communicate through body language. Like, you can't just talk to them in English words, or sorry, words. And so you, like, those yeses, those nos, the yawns, some of those things that I've learned from you, as far as what would indicate a receptive mode, what would indicate, I mean, the hiss is really obvious, but you're not always going to get that. So can you describe some of the things that you would look for in body language that might indicate whether an animal is giving you consent or not?
Sure. So sometimes the same behavior can mean yes or no as well. So they're like that.
Just to make it easy.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the obvious yeses is that the animal moves closer to you. Okay. Because we also It's important to mention that we're not beaming Reiki at them. Our hands should be kind of down and relaxed, so that they have choice of coming closer to us or not, or even investigating our hands. So an animal coming closer to you, licking your hands, turning a body part to you. Horses, I've had horses like turn their rear end to me. Maybe they just want it scratched. Maybe there's something going on there. So just observing. And the key to also with consent is it's not like that. So I ask you a question, you say yes or no. It can take up to 5 minutes of, asking for the consent and just watching these behaviors. They can leave the room and then come back, or leave their space and then come back into it. So it's just, again, those are most common yeses of just kind of sticking around and hanging out in the energy and around you or in the caregiver. Some obvious no's behaviorally are the hisses, the tail tuck, I'm gone, not going to stay in this room at all. In herd animals, they'll just leave, they'll just leave the space. So for me, the no's through behavior can be kind of the most difficult. And then I just tap into how the Reiki is feeling for me, because for me, I feel Reiki flowing through me when an animal says yes. And so if I'm feeling a block of some kind, I'm going to kind of just wait it out and ask more questions internally and telepathically to the animal, as far as, is this just not a good time? Because there are times when it's feeding time or it's walk time and they're like, I'm out of here. This is, so trying to get them, okay, so it's not necessarily a no, it's a no, not now. I have not ever gotten, to be honest with you, a no, never. So, so I always kind of go back to it and have that conversation with the caregiver. And then if there's no change in behavior, like maybe the animal client you're working on is already asleep. And sometimes that can happen when I work with exotic animals, like at the zoo or something. It's midday. Most all the animals are sleeping and chilling out. So if I'm activating Reiki and there's no change, I'm asking Reiki to discern for me. And usually that's an indication of that they're being receptive and saying yes. So,
Like the rhinos that we work on.
mm-hmm.
They're always sleeping.
Yeah.
But they love it. You can see the little ear twitch kind of showing up. Yes, and I would add to that too through the observation. And then I want to add a little bit about the safety too, because the safety part of it, I think, is a really big piece of what we teach that maybe people haven't thought about. And that ties in with the observation, is that as the practitioner, our role is to pay attention to the safety for ourselves, the animal, and then also the caregiver, because we have experienced as practitioners where caregivers put themselves in unsafe position trying to manage a certain circumstance, almost like you do if your kids are acting up. If the animals are acting up, the caregiver might insert themselves. um, One of the things that we show sometimes with one of the videos we have is that we did not know we were going to be working on certain horses, and we actually didn't have the appropriate shoes on. It was okay because the horses that we did end up working on, we knew very well, and it was okay, but it was something that we just want to make sure that we talk about, that you wear the appropriate clothing for the work that you're doing. Boots if you're with large animals that can step on you. And then also, Sue, you talk about having a change of clothing if you're going to, say, the Humane Society to do volunteer work. And then before you go home, the biosafety. I'll let you talk about the biosafety because you're more of an expert with that. But then I do have to share my safety story, because we can get that. What is it called? Cute, not cuteness overload, Robyn.
Cuteness aggression.
Cuteness aggression. Okay, so that's a
Explain
term.
what that is. Explain what that is, though, because
Cuteness aggression is when they're so cute, you just kind of disconnect, lose your mind, and just get all over the animal
You just
because
want
you're
to
so
squeeze them and
excited.
hug them, and I just love you so much. And like, I just squeeze you or kiss you so hard because you're just so cute and I love you.
Well, the cutest video of that one is the girl with the cow.
Yeah.
And she says, cuteness, aggression. And this giant cow is just laying next to her. And she's just hugging it and squeezing it. And she says, I just have cuteness, aggression. And she lays on top of it. And the cow's just like, yeah, okay.
The best part about having the cow is that you can have that cuteness aggression as much as you want, and it's not going to hurt the cow because you can just
Right.
squeeze the cow as hard as you want. Like, you can't do that to a cat, even though you want to, you just want to, like, I just love you.
Exactly. So I had cuteness, aggression, and Sue was being patient and just observing me. Speaking of observation, observing me with one of the alpacas that was a bottle-fed baby, and he was so friendly and so cute. Not alpacas like to be touched, but Jack liked to be touched. So, of course, in all my excitement, I get on the ground to do a selfie with him because he was right behind me, putting his head kind of next to my head. And I was like, oh, isn't this the cutest selfie ever? Yeah, well, he was behind me for a purpose. And I'll just say the words out loud here. He was ready to mount me. So
That's how
Sue's like,
alpacas breed.
Yeah.
that's how they breed. So Sue was like, Colleen, get up. So observation, safety, consent. We had consent. Um, and then I have another story about consent that I thought was a really interesting one for me because the same thing, typically we observe consent through noticing their behaviors. This one was telepathic. And I was on a walk. I came to a bush full of bees and they were just busy and I was like, "Oh, exciting. I'm going to give Reiki to the bees." And so I stopped to do it and they just like yelled at me. "No, we have like 10 minutes left of light. We have lots of work to do. Don't you even think about slowing us down. You can come back tomorrow." So, so like she said, the consent wasn't never, the consent was not right now. So that was one of the ones where, a lot of times it is telepathic, where you get that kind of a feeling or you get a definite feeling of no. But most of the time it's also, or much of the time it's also through that observation.
Well, and I do want to say, because we're all giving our examples of no's are not super common. So it's funny that we're all giving those examples, but that is one of the things too that we definitely talk about. Like they said, it's not right now. There are actually so many animals are so receptive to the Reiki energy, that it's actually more often than not yeses. Especially if you are in a situation where you have a session with your animal or somebody else's animal where it's actually kind of being set up for that purpose. The yeses are more common than the nos.
Yeah, I would say 98% of the time it's yes.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, as I was sharing this story, I thought, well, those people who have taken animal Reiki have heard these examples because it is pretty uncommon that you get any kind of a no.
Well, not everyone though, because we tell them sporadically and when we
Yeah.
tell our stories. We have a lot of them, especially Sue. So you were going to talk about biosafety, Sue.
Yeah, so part of that priority of safety is also not physical safety, but also biosecurity safety. And so, depending on where you're going to be doing your session and practicing, you want to, whether you're going to the animals and going from client to client, you want to make sure that you're, of course, washing your hands. And the reason I talk about changing your clothes is if I go to a large facility like an animal shelter or a humane society where there's multiple dogs. Upper respiratory disease is very common when there's concentrations of large animal population like that. And so because I have dogs at home, I just want to make sure I don't bring anything home to them. And kennel cough is one of the most common things in those environments. So thinking about that. So for example, if you are working on horses and then you have horses, it would probably be a good idea to whatever footwear you're using to do what we call a foot bath, where you step in with your shoes in a disinfectant before you go to the next horse or to your own horse, things like that. So that's all part of the safety priority and making sure that, you know, we're not transmitting from one client to the other as well. So, and if you're going to be working, you know, somewhere like a doggy daycare or in a vet clinic where you have different clients coming in and out of the same rooms, so important to disinfect in between the surfaces and things between each client too.
So one of the other things too that is a a learning experience with animal Reiki, you had talked about it a little bit, Sue, is that the aspect of hands-on. So not all animals even like hands-on Reiki. You talked a little bit about it in Reiki in motion. We have what we call the Reiki zone, super helpful for large animals to know that you don't have to have hands-on Reiki. Now, some animals love it, so it is not that all sessions need to be hands off, but some animals actually prefer to not have hands-on Reiki. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So different species, even the same species, like I have 5 dogs and they all have different personalities, just like us. And so some of them like to just lay in what Robyn referred to as the Reiki zone. And that's an area where I envision kind of like if I'm in somebody's living room and they have an area rug, I will create a Reiki zone around that area rug. And with the animal having freedom to come in and out of that zone, that's going to be telling me that a yes or a no. That's one observation. But then I'm usually like sitting on the couch or something, and they can come and lay right by my feet. I'm not going to reach down and touch them. I'm going to just let them engage with me and come to my hands. So they may just want to be near me and lay at my feet, but I'm typically not reaching out and touching an animal unless they come into my hands specifically. So horses are also kind of like that when you're at a pasture, and if you know, again, safety, not having your hands through if they're in a corral with bars and things, but if it's kind of open, they might lean over the fence and lay their hands. A lot of them like to lay their head and muzzle into your hands, and then it's okay to engage. So I think the biggest thing is just, again, letting the animal initiate touch. And just, again, I have learned so much from different species, and you know, doing Reiki on an animal far away or wildlife, you know, you can still, with wildlife, obviously you're not going to be touching them, but you can still have your hands open and inviting and, you know, sending Reiki that way. And so you'd be surprised. I've done bird feeders and it's really fun. Just, you know, sometimes I've had a hummingbird just come and stay right here and then fly off. And I'm like, okay, I'll take that as a yes. And obviously I didn't reach up to touch. So yeah, the Reiki energy is amazing, and just surrounding yourself with it and allowing the animals to come in and out of it. So, but we all love hands-on too. So we don't want you to think you can't do hands-on.
I think it's also helpful for people to understand too that, for instance, you mentioned large animals, that you can absolutely give Reiki from this side of the fence. The animals on the other side are in the pasture and or in the stall, and you're on the outside of the stall, and you can absolutely just give Reiki from that perspective. So for anyone that's listening that may, you know, not have any experience with large animals, and suddenly now someone asks you to give Reiki to a horse and you don't know a lot about horses, even if you do know a lot about horses and you don't know anything about that horse, or maybe an injured horse, you know, they don't always intend to hurt you, but just because they're large, they can, and not all of them have, you know, good spatial training to not step on you or run you into a wall. So anyway, you can absolutely give Reiki from the outside of the pasture or the outside of the stall and create that Reiki zone. The animal still is in that Reiki motion. Or for instance, if you were in a veterinary clinic where you might be giving Reiki to cats that are in a cage or something like that. The same thing that you might be on the outside of the cage rather than trying to be inside. The same with wild animals or animals at the zoo, for instance.
Even our own animals. I
Yes.
had two dogs. They've since both passed, and Thomas and Davina. And one of them loved Reiki. Davina loved Reiki. She was a Reiki dog, would come up and give Reiki and receive Reiki, and you knew when she was asking for it, and loved hands-on. And then Thomas, actually, he didn't prefer Reiki until this energy came in. Um, so that was another surprising thing too. It's really gentle and powerful. And I don't, again, we always want to honor that not everybody wants to take this training. So we still want to make sure that people we're giving helpful information to people that aren't called to it. But I will say that this is also a common story within our court in our classes that some animals just didn't prefer Reiki before, and this energy it really resonates with them. And a lot of what this energy is described as is very gentle, but very powerful, and a very grounded energy as well. And so Thomas didn't love receiving Reiki. He didn't dislike it, but he didn't really ever receive it easily. Um, could just take it or leave it, really. And when this energy came in, he resonated with it and he did like it and he did receive it. And that was a big learning curve, I think, even for all of us as we were getting to know the energy with this. But even still, even after that, he did not like hands on. So I would give him Reiki when he was on his bed. We have a video of it actually. Um, he was attacked by another dog. I was with him and we were walking on. He was attacked by another dog, and one of the things that we teach in the master class is an extraction technique for an intrusion or an attachment. And so when this happened, we were actually writing this part of the manual. And so just through the whole process, we were listening very deeply into the different experiences that we were experiencing during it. We knew were very divinely ordered. And so Thomas definitely agreed to have this technique on him, and still not hands-on, and not even in the area that he had an injury. He was okay, but not even in the area that he had an injury. So he was across the room from me and on his mat. That was the cue, on your mat, on his mat. And I just gave him Reiki from across the room on his mat, and that's how he preferred it. And you can see it on video, he's alert. He's at first, and then I've activated Reiki, and after a certain amount of time, he relaxes. I can even feel it when just recalling the image on the screen of the video, and he relaxes, and there's big sighs, and all of that was from across the room. And any time that there was Reiki that was warranted or any sort of intuitive, hit that he might want Reiki, I always did it from across the room. He never preferred hands-on. And so I think that more than anything, that's really one of the biggest learning things as well, because there's an unlearning with that and then a relearning. Like, yes, we know distance Reiki works, and so much of animal Reiki is through distance, but this is even a little bit of a deeper understanding of it, that even when we're in person, it is not necessary for us to be like hands-on with them. And I will say too, after one of my seizures, Colleen gave me Reiki, or went to give me Reiki. We were sitting on the couch, and I was so electrical at the time that her putting her hands on me, it was just like, I can't even describe how I would have never thought this, that it was too much. And it gave me a little bit of an insight into how animals might feel of like Reiki just being too much. I was too sensitive. And so what she did is she just sat next to me, activated the Reiki zone, was running Reiki through her and given me that kind of very gentle zone. And I was able to receive on that level. And, I think from all of our experiences that would be kind of akin to what we would describe it as, is that maybe they're just too sensitive. It's too maybe too much for certain animals. Yeah, I don't know. We don't know exactly, obviously, but that's kind of what our experience has been, and it is on an individual basis and a time to time basis. Sometimes an animal might want it hands on, and other times they might just want to be in that zone.
You also brought up a point that made me think that I don't know that we've ever really talked about this, but working on an animal that has been getting have treatment. So let's say you have a dog you're working because it has ear infections. Well, if you want to physically touch that dog's ear, he may have had so many treatments that it's become a negative experience to have physical touch because he thinks he gets all frozen because he thinks he's going to get ear drops or it's going to be cleaned, or same thing can be with other, horse's leg or whatever. So that hands on can actually have a more negative effect than it would just because they've been getting treatments for a specific body part. So being just, hands off is really important. So again, that's through the observation and talking with your caregiver and finding out exactly, meet the animal where they're at.
Yeah.
So I
Go
think
ahead.
I'd also like to talk a little bit about the energy of it because we've talked about just a little bit of the differences that we have noticed through the process of development of this course. And we can say it took us 5 years to develop this course because when William asked us to write it, we were aware of the tools and the techniques because we'd been practicing Reiki for years with animals. And it wasn't until partway through it that the energy kept saying, it's not ready yet, it's not ready yet. We had met the divine animal kingdom. So they are like some of the major spiritual teachers of this energy, and how we developed the course was through journeying to them and listening to them, and receiving guidance from them as well as the Reiki energy. And it was when the energy of unification consciousness came in the system of Holy Fire Reiki 3, that we knew that it was the energy said, now it's ready. And that unification consciousness is such an important piece of it because what the animals have asked us is to take our place again as human beings in the circle of life with them. And what we have found with this energy is when we receive it as humans, both through the attunement and then when we share it with others through, as a Reiki practitioner, because it is for people as much as it is for the animals and for nature, the the energy and the animals actually said, you need to bring yourself back into the circle of life with us and bring us back to that unification and communion with them. And one of the things that they talked about was healing kind of the collective belief in humans have dominion over the earth. And they repeatedly showed us that, which also contributed to the awareness of consent with them, because even in the attunement to the energy, the animals were very clear that we were sharing our blessings with them and they were sharing their blessings with us, and that they want us to come into that circle with them. And we think that that is part of the reason that they're so receptive to this energy, is because it moves us more into kind of that heart connection with them, because we are now more in our authentic human nature, realizing that in the circle of life, we're the human beings in the circle. The dog is in dog nature, the giraffe is in giraffe nature, the ant is in ant nature, the humans are in human nature. And also then the other thing that we really came to understand is this is for the animals, for the people, but also for the earth and all of nature. That this has really brought us into a deeper connection with communion with the earth itself and with nature. Um, I just recently taught an in-person class at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. And one of the parts that I loved the most was, well, not, I loved all of it. I could say, oh, and then I loved this the most. But one of the things I really loved so much was we activated that Reiki zone around us, and then we went out into the trees and into the lake. And what happens is it activates what we call extraordinary reality. So it moves us into that next level of perception of the world around us. And suddenly the trees came alive and the faces came alive. And we could notice when we were at the lake, the fish came to the edge of the shore towards us. The hawk started circling around us. We all ended up with caterpillars on us constantly, and like on our bodies or on different things that we had. And so I also wanted to share about the energy. And as we say, we want to be clear that we know so many people are already working with Reiki the way that you do, and we honor that completely. One of the significant teachings from the animals and the nature spirits is the understanding that what I guess I'll just share a little bit of the story. So I was writing an article for Reiki News magazine about Reiki and nature spirits and asking the animals what they wanted us to know, what they wanted to say. And I was waiting for them to reprimand us about the harm we do. And me personally, we had a 30-acre farm at the time, and what kind of a land manager was I? And the animals said, well, wait, if we could teach you one thing, it would be to love yourselves as much as we love you. We think you are extraordinary, and the earth loves you. And when you love yourselves like we love you, then your creations reflect that belief. When you believe yourselves to be destructive, your creations reflect that belief. And so the teaching has been kind of one that we do so much with Reiki already is self-love, self-worth. And that's what the animals say. They care so deeply about us that that is what they say heals them, is when we bring ourselves back into our own inner truth, love ourselves, love our sense of worth, and begin to take our place as part of the earth, and to honor our own human nature and the love that we actually are as people. So the idea and the awareness that this energy, and all of Reiki true too, but this energy very specifically, as Sue said, it's called Tree of Life, the Tree of Life symbol and energy, is that it is very much about nature, the trees, the rivers, the waters, the air, the clouds, the mountains, the cities. We bring it into the cities, and suddenly the extraordinary reality in the city shows up, like the rhythm of the city. And so it's not just about like being an animal Reiki practitioner. We hear over and over and over again how receiving this energy is profoundly healing for us as people, both when we receive it and then also sharing it with other people as part of our practice as well, and as well as the animals. So I know we want to talk some more about the the working with the land and the rivers like we're going to be doing up in Wildwood this summer. So I'm I don't want to take up all the conversation. So go ahead, Robyn or Sue.
Well, I know that Sue and I can have I agree, Colleen. That is the the surprising aspect of this energy and working with the animals is the level that it heals us, because that is really first and foremost. Like, yeah, we talk about the tips and tricks and techniques and things like that, but it's profound. It's, some people will talk about how, and I know it is for us as well, it's literally life-changing. It's life-changing. And that belonging to the earth. And we have talked about how is animal Reiki even the proper name? It is, but it is like we've talked about, is it Earth Reiki? Is it, because it's so inclusive of all of nature. And Sue and I have some kind of similar story, her more so than me, just about how it also healed our um human, like that human aspect of it. Um because yes, with animals, you are working with caregivers. So many people come into the class and they're like, well, no, I have more interest in, I don't really want to work with humans. Like I want to work with people or with animals. And Sue can talk about that from her perspective. But for me, the story that I have around that is that, I have a garden out front and connecting in with the trees and the land and the ground, and um, is no problem. Like that to me, and so many people can identify with that. I'm not unique to that, but for me, like that is, I mean, if nature is God, we are nature. That is a part of how I feel when I'm in nature. And so my garden had to be moved to out front instead of my backyard. And I do live in a neighborhood ish. So, but it's, anyway. And when I activate Reiki and Tree of Life and Animal Reiki, it's so helpful in the garden with the plants, with the biome of the soil, with all of that. It's helpful for me. It's helpful for the garden. We're in a symbiosis in that process. And um, that part is easy. I can feel that just, deep, deep, deep connection that so many of you I know can relate to. But what I had a hard time with were my neighbors. Not that anything was wrong with my neighbors. They're my neighbors. I actually have pretty great neighbors. It was just the idea of neighbors, like, neighbors. And I live across the street from a church. So there's certain times of the week that are very busy, specifically Sunday mornings, obviously. And, you'd have the people, it's a smaller church, but you'd have the people that would come see my garden every week. And they'd make comments. Oh, I love, this. Oh, look at that's growing. Like, and they would love to talk about my garden. And at first I was just kind of mortified by it because I'm kind of private. And over time, this healing that has occurred through this energy around that has been extraordinary. And it has been life changing because I wholeheartedly believe that through working with Tree of Life out in my garden and this energy and this symbol and the animal kingdom, it has healed that with me and for me. It has allowed me to see the communion with my community. Okay, I'm okay living in symbiosis with the earth and my garden, but I'm not okay living in some symbiosis with my like my direct community. I mean, these people are around me all the time. And I am so grateful that I have very nice neighbors, and the people are very kind that come and to the church and, want to talk to me. But then also just the idea that it's bringing them joy. And there's people, some of the elderly people that park like right in front of my house, and they've told me stories about how, they used to have a garden and they can't garden anymore, and how much joy it brings me to see me and my daughter out there together gardening, because that's one of my purposes with it. And the flowers that bring them joy, and that complete transformation within myself of that now it's actually a joyful experience to have conversations with people about this, for the neighbors to stop and talk to me, and like how much more I'm in communion with the humans around me, not just the worms that are in the soil and the plants that are growing, the tomatoes we're going to eat and things like that. Like, and that's so funny that I'm like, oh, I love the worms, but neighbors. And it's funny too, because I don't dislike people, I like people. Um, it's just, I think it's that privacy thing, but it has made me a lot more open-hearted to this symbiotic circle. It's the circle of life that's around me. And that includes humans, that includes these people that are a part of my everyday life. And so that's really been a huge healing and a really big transformation that makes me look even outside of this immediate circle very differently, as the human circle as well. It makes me look at it all very differently. And that's a lifetime healing for me. Sue, I know you have a perspective around that.
Well, from, as a teenager, and I have interviewed a lot of people for a lot of different animal jobs. And I had the same attitude of, oh, I want to work with animals so I don't have to work with people. And it was vet care. It could have been, anything, which is such a, looking back, kind of a naive statement. But yes, this energy has taught me, that to be belonging. And if you're going to, I work with domestics a lot. And so they are attached to people. And I've worked for a lot of nonprofits, and that's who pays my paycheck. And so to give them a tour and to give them, to tell them about our mission and things like that. So it has taught me to, resonate with people. But what I've come to realize is how much I enjoy creating and helping people see their bond with their animal, that human animal bond. And to watch, some of my clients at guide dogs have never even owned a dog before, and to watch and help navigate their connection with a dog and their lifetime partnership that they're about to go out on an adventure. And so just that brings me such joy, and observing, the human animal bond, even with wild animals, and watching my partner Roger likes to feed the deer. Like, he creates this little tarp system and deer blocks, and he's so connected to them on such a spiritual level. And it's just so it's just wonderful. And so it's really taught me, and like you said, very life-changing on this energy, and how it is so inclusive, and outside of doing animal Reiki practice, doing sessions, just how I move through life now. It's life-changing.
Agreed.
I think there's another benefit too with the deeper understanding of how the animals care for us.
Mm-hmm.
That has been a really big piece. And I think I've kind of always known that because I've had such deep connections with some of my own animals. But then really hearing from the animals in the divine animal kingdom about how much it matters to them that we are cared for as well. So we think of us as the caregivers for the animals, and the animals think of themselves as the caregivers for us. And again, going back to the Omega class, it was so cute because we had two different dogs come into the classroom, and one at a time, by the way. And so the first dog came in and he was just like, sweet, it's all about me. And he's rolling all over and he's wandering through. And of course, we created the Reiki zone and Reiki in motion. And we had 14 people. So half the class worked on the dog and half the class observed the dog and observed the session. And this dog was just hilarious. He's all about it, and he's just on it. So he comes in and he receives, it's all about him, and he was great. loved his caregivers, kept going back to them, like, yeah, thanks, this is great. Then the second dog came in, and this poor dog, she's an old lady lab, kind of overweight, no body shaming, but just a little bit. And she was away from home, which was not her norm, panting because it was hot. And she gets into the classroom, and you can see that she did everything there to be there for her caregiver,
Mm.
for the person who brought her. She was like, okay, I'll receive Reiki for you. And it of course was for her too, but you could see the difference in that connection where she was really all about being in service for all of us, giving her Reiki, giving us Reiki back from her, and giving us all the experience, including her caregiver. And I think that's the other piece. And we know that with horses that like their heartbeat will match our heartbeat. They can sense things, and we know animals can sense things. But I think that's the other piece of this that really has just made such a difference in the awareness of, oh, well, also we have to talk about the eagles. So Jackie and Shadow, that the whole world has been watching with Gizmo and Sunny, their babies, on YouTube. And so, really getting to see the true nature of animals and watching these eagles from the time that they were, hatching the eggs and the babies are growing up and the first one flying off, and that was Sunny. And Sunny's very competent, practicing on it, the whole thing, watching the parents take care of Sunny. And then there's Gizmo. Gizmo's going to the edge of the nest, and she's looking down and she's like, no, I'm not ready for that. Sunny would come back and go, come on, you can do it. But watching them bond. So then the other day, and this has been a couple weeks by the time this is posted, Gizmo's practicing on a branch. She's flapping her wings, and oops, she fell. Instead, she didn't mean to fall. She didn't mean to fly yet. So she falls down, she's flying off, and she lands in another tree. And of course, we're all like, what happens now? Because you can see she is not leaving this next tree. She's standing on that branch. And the mother comes the next day and brings her a fish. And you could see her, she landed on a limb, and you could see her looking at Gizmo like, you have to come get it. I'm not bringing it to you. You have to do it. You can do it. You can do it. And so Gizmo takes the thing, she eats the fish. And then this morning, they're all back in the nest. Gizmo made it back to the nest. Sunny's back in the nest. The parents are back in the nest. So beautiful. But I think I've always loved animals. I've always known about animal, that they have this, their own families, their own nature, their own way of being. This has been so fun to watch. Just such a treat. So it's so exciting. So anyway, I digress.
Well, what I like about you bringing that up, Colleen, and you kind of mentioned it before, is that we're we've been called this year to have in-person classes again. So we actually haven't done an in-person class since before the pandemic. And there's a lot of reasons on to why all of that has transpired. But this year we were called to do in-person classes, and then Colleen is teaching or just taught 1 and 2 Animal Reiki 1 and 2 at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, and then she teaches another one in September, the master class. It's September, and then we are teaching Animal Reiki 1 and 2 and Animal Reiki Master in person here in Oregon in July. So it'll be not too. We'll be posting this in the next couple of weeks, so it's at the end of July. I think it's 1 and 2 is July 21st and 22nd, or 22nd and 23rd. Then we take a day break. Then it's the 25th through the 27th, I believe. Sue's double checking those dates. And the reason that I bring that up is because, we were called to do this class because we absolutely love it. And this place that we're doing it at, we call it Wildwood Park, but it's not really a park. It is a nature reserve. It's over 500 acres and it is deep forest. It is beautiful though, because it is like ADA compliant, right? So there's paved paths. It's, certain parts that you wouldn't be able to go to, but it's very gentle as far as the paths. We're doing it in a shelter in the middle of the woods, and the shelter has electricity and things like that. So it's a nice shelter, but it is kind of like an open air shelter. And it's really easy to get to from the parking lot and all of those kinds of things. But it is a Pacific Northwest forest, and it has the Salmon River that runs through it is absolutely extraordinary. The color of that water, you can't even ever get it on photos, right? Like I will take video of it and pictures of it, and I never can get the color right, even through editing my photos, because it's clear and kind of opal color. It's not like a turquoise blue, but I don't even know how to describe the color of that water. But both of you know what I'm talking about. Or if you've been to the river up there, you know what I'm talking about. And one of the things that people don't know about Oregon in the summer is how absolutely beautiful it is. Like you have all of the videos online of like the moody Oregon forest. And that's beautiful too in the winter. But in the summer, it is bright and green. And I mean, we just have an exuberance of foliage because we have deciduous trees here as well as the evergreen. And it's a- the opposite end of the spectrum of moody, of those moody things, but in just the most incredible way. Like the sun filters through the trees and those rays, those beams, those sunbeams, and the birds are loud, and the river is just, the flow of that river over the rocks. I mean, it's just absolutely magical. And this place that we're having the the class in is basically across the street from Sue's house. Like, I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but she walks there pretty much every day with her dogs. And you have to tell the story about the Bridge of Light, Sue. And I take Luna there in the summer. We swim in the swimming holes there. And it's like, we've gone there, Colleen and myself and Luna, since she was a baby, and we play in the river there. I mean, it's just this really magical, special place that all of us are really deeply connected to. And we go there and we connect in with the trees, and that's kind of where I was going with with the connection to what you were talking about, Colleen, with the eagles, is because those are kind of some of the things that happen in Wildwood. You have these extraordinary interactions with the animals, and I don't want to necessarily guarantee that as a part of the class, like you were saying, Colleen, with Omega. Like you can be a place and you activate Reiki, and all of a sudden, the fish come like closer to where you're at, or you have an interaction with a dragonfly, or the crows or the ravens will start up in their way that they're communicating with us. And you have the little critters like the chipmunks and things like that that are really a special part of this. And then the other one thing that I want to mention, because I know both of you have so much to talk about with this just magical place, is the underwater viewing area. So in Wildwood, it's a part of the Pacific Northwest salmon um, spawn, and they have trail watching, and so you can go a certain time of year, and I don't know when it is exactly, and it obviously changes from time to time, but you can see the salmon coming upstream in this park because they've come up to spawn. But they have this underwater viewing thing, and it's just like you think about in a zoo where you kind of go down a ramp, and it's small, but you go down a ramp and you can see underneath the little creek that runs through there. And we've come across, they always have little fish in there, just little tiny ones. But we've had frogs and we've had snails, and there's periwinkles in there and water skippers. And so you can go into this little underwater viewing chamber, and then they have different areas along the trail that they have viewing spots and places where you can interact with the river. But going under that underwater viewing area is just really fun. And because it's like a natural creek, it's like the natural area there, you really get to see the wildlife that's a part of this ecosystem that's here in this, again, I'm going to say park, but it's actually a reserve. It's really big. It's the forest.
Definitely. Yeah, going there so frequently, I'm so blessed and grateful that I have that in my backyard, literally. Um, but it's interesting too that, we've been talking about doing a class there because as we were writing this manual, there's this beautiful big bridge that goes over the Salmon River to another boardwalk area that's very educational and has little fingers of boardwalk that go out into the wetlands and things like that, and has all kinds of educational signage for the different birds and things. And I literally have done like an in-person physical walking over the Bridge of Light, finding a big stump that had a hole that I would like visually dive myself into this vortex and go in underground. And it's just like offers like everything that has come through with this energy and that you guys present, and like the distance Reiki share and how you get us started in our journeys and stuff. It's there. Like I've been living it, not knowing I was living it until, I put all the pieces together. And yeah, it's like a walking meditation for me. And it's just amazing. I've been on this bridge and activating Reiki for the river and had a bald eagle literally fly right over my head because it was salmon season and they were hunting. And I was like, whoa, what was that? I've seen bear there, and there's been, so it has all kinds of things. And it's definitely my happy place for sure. So I'm so excited that we're going to be teaching there and bringing people there and showing them what, what we get excited about.
Yeah, part of our hearts.
Yeah.
Well, and for me too, the trees.
Mhm.
So very old growth forest, and lots of trees and plants and the recognition of the trees. And, one of the things that I learned years ago with Tom Cowan in Celtic shamanism with fairies is that for all of it to really be able to perceive us to be in that back and forth communion is for us to light our heart and for us to shine our shine so they can see us. And what you see happening as we do the things like walking meditations, or just, well, in this case, we don't even need to walk anywhere because we're surrounded in it. But what happens as we activate that Reiki within us is everything just comes alive. It's that extraordinary reality. And suddenly you can see, the consciousness of the trees and feel them engaging with you, notice them noticing you. And the same with even some of the stones, like some of the rocks will come alive with their faces, and you just see things so differently. Or as you're walking along and that one leaf, there's no breeze anywhere, and the one leaf is waving at you. And just that whole sense of the energy of the land is so beautiful. And at that time of year, there will probably be quite a few people there enjoying the river. And also, I think for me, like hearing the laughter of the children in the water is also another piece of the sound of life, like just being in the extraordinary reality of life, connecting with those trees and the beauty of them and the life of them. And then one of the things, of course, that we've been talking about so much is the awareness of the mycelia underneath the ground. And that is the network of communication that the trees have with one another also. And so there's just that earth connection that that deep awareness. And like Robin said, the sunlight shining through the branches of the trees and those golden beams of light. Or for me, I'm dazzled by the sparkling water that, the sun hits the water and it just sparkles and it's bright and brilliant. And you can sometimes, some of the pools, you can actually see the salmon. Like these are big salmon. This is not, these aren't just little ones. They are spawning and you see the little ones too. But, the great big fish and the water dwellers and just the extraordinary life that we're in. And then, of course, even leaving that land is Mount Hood.
Yeah.
And talk about the energy of a place connecting with the mountain and just the magnificence of it. And when you come into Portland, of course, you can see Mount St. Helens, the one that was a volcano that blew in the 1980s, and Mount Adams, and sometimes Mount Rainier, just depends on the day and the clarity, but also all the way through Eastern Oregon too. So just beautiful, beautiful land. And you can hear like, don't get us started.
Yeah.
We could just keep talking about it.
Well, and we do this in both classes, but in the master class, we even have a meditation that's, the is the heartbeat of the earth. That one's in the master class, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. And the rest and receive and the tree of life. We have these meditations that we are even more, we dive even deeper into the nature aspect of these courses and of that class. And one of the things that we do this in the 1 and 2 also, but it just depends on how much time we have. But we do it in the master class for sure, where when we're online, is we give Reiki to pictures of nature. And there's a few of the pictures that we share that we've taken from this class, completely separate, or from this Wildwood, completely separate of, where of like this, the fact that we were teaching here. We've been doing this for years, not knowing that we were going to be teaching here. So just some of the trees and things like that that are just so, so special. I'm glad you mentioned the mycelia too, Colleen, because I was thinking, oh yeah, and the mushrooms on the trees, and things like that, that it's so lush here in the summers. It really is just beautiful. And the good thing is about there is not only that we're in the trees and on the river, and we don't, for those of you that are in other areas that have a lot of bugs, we don't have a ton of bugs. I mean, we'll get a normal amount of bugs in the evenings, but it's not a lot in comparison to some places. um so like saying that we're on the river, sometimes that can be like, oh my gosh, how many bugs do you have? But also the temperatures are pretty sustainable here in the summer. So we can get heat waves, but because we're up at the base of Mount Hood and we're in the Mount Hood National Forest, we're at kind of an elevation. So it does keep it a bit cooler, which is really nice too. And being in the forest also, of course, does that as well. So anyway, yeah, like you said, Colleen, I was posting a picture on our Reiki Lifestyle account the other day because I drive by John's Red to take Luna to school. It's this extraordinary viewpoint of Mount Hood, and if you follow our social media, you'll see it on our stories from time to time. And we send Reiki to it when we're in the Animal Reiki online classes, and the pictures from that spot. And so I post it from time to time. And that viewpoint is 5 minutes off the highway when you're on your way, or
Yeah.
way to or from Wildwood. Like it's a very easy 5 minutes off the highway. So if you're coming to and from the airport or Portland area west of us, you can always stop by that viewpoint if you have time to and from. It's unbelievable as well.
Well, as you can hear, we're super excited about the in-person, but also, because we still, even in those classes, we still are teaching distant Reiki because distance Reiki is a pretty big part of animal Reiki because of the logistics of getting the animals to you or you to the animals. So it's another part of the training is how to give distance Reiki to animals as well. So that'll be a part of it. But also, so for any of you that can't do the in-person, either here in Oregon or the master class with me in Rhinebeck, New York at Omega, um, our online courses, I think, are extraordinary also. And one of the things that I love with it is the depth of understanding you gain with how powerful Reiki is at a distance, that it works every bit as powerfully as in-person Reiki. So any of you that are in areas like, in Omega, we had several people that live right in the heart of New York City. So they don't easily have a farm to go to. They can go into Central Park, so they could do the work there. But speaking of a master class, that, you know, in these cases, we're doing the 1 and 2, which is, of course, the practitioner class, and then also doing the master class, which not only amplifies your energy personally and with the animals, but also teaches you how to teach it. I think it's important to realize that there are lots of ways that we practice animal Reiki without having a farm available or without having in-person animals available. And the understanding of nature exists in the city, nature exists in the neighborhoods. Nature, of course, we're fortunate where we live here that we are in an abundance of nature, even in the neighborhoods. Um, so, sometimes that dandelion growing up through the crack in the sidewalk is another piece where you suddenly feel this connection with this little beautiful yellow face growing in the crack of nowhere, that doesn't look like how did it even find its way there? And its beautiful yellow face up at the sun. Um, so, I just also want to say that it's not required that you can only do this in person. Um, Probably ultimately, the majority of Reiki practitioners end up practicing a high level of or high percentage of distance Reiki because of those logistics. So, like I say, our old girl that came to our class, she was like working so hard to get there, and she was so good and so lovely and wonderful to be there. But she probably would have preferred distance where she was at home, and she loved the Reiki, but it's like, yeah, it was a lot of work to come here and do this for you guys. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that as well.
Well, and it's part of the reason that we've just had um, so many beautiful experiences in teaching online, and we will continue to do that majority because of, like you said, Colleen, it's just there's so many logistics to getting into an in-person class, but these ones are a little bit more of like an experience
Yeah.
type class.
Well, we're all excited. I
Yeah,
just
we are.
don't get us started.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, our online classes are equally as incredible. And that's all we've been teaching for the most part. I mean, other than save a few before the pandemic, and still people are having life-changing experiences in those classes. So they're all beautiful. All right. Well, we do have online class in October, online 1 and 2 and master as well. So just mentioning that if you're not able to do the July classes, we have online in October. Our in-person 1 and 2 is almost full, but our master class still has room. So if you are an animal Reiki 1 and 2 and a human Reiki master, we would love to have you join us. You can email us if you have any questions around any of that. And you can go to, of course, ReikiLifestyle.com to find out more about it. If you go to our social media, Reiki Lifestyle Official, there is a reel that has some footage from Wildwood Park. All of it's taken from Wildwood Park. So you can go and check it out there to see some of the footage, and also turn the sound on because the song that's on there is, I love that song. It's from Frozen 2, but it's magical. So All right. Well, lots of love to everybody. Of course, you can find us all at ReikiLifestyle.com. And then Sue is SIOUX at ReikiLifestyle.com if you want to get a hold of her too. That's her email address. Okay. All right. Well, thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.